Welcome to another episode of Clear to Close, where our goal is to get you clear to close. Today, I get the great privilege of introducing you to one of our hosts here, Carson Joens, and we want to get to know Carson a little bit better so you have an idea what's behind him, what makes him tick kind of thing. So let's start with the easy question. I hope at least easy. That would be, what got you into real estate? Like what got you on this path to be a real estate agent?
Yeah, honestly, that's a complicated answer because I don't even really know exactly what got me onto the path. I was running a golf store here in town and a little bit more kind of entrepreneur, doing my own thing. And then one day, I don't know what it was, but I was looking around at different things and I was like, I wonder how tough it'd be to get my real estate license. And I said, I'm decent at sales. I might be able to do that. And so I go in and I started looking online, and sure enough, I said, I'll try it. I'll just pay the fee, try to get my real estate license. And I actually, as soon as I started really diving into it, most of the time the real estate course is going to take you 2 to 4 months, anywhere in there. And I just hammered through that thing as quick as I possibly could. And I've never really been one that's very good at school, very good at test taking, but with the real estate exam, something about me, or maybe it was God telling me you need this. And it just made me work a little extra hard to get done with that school. So I got done with the school, got my real estate license out of nowhere. And it was November of 2017 that I was officially licensed for the first time. And honestly, by summer of 2018, I was ready to start doing it completely full time. I stopped working at the golf store and really just said, you know what, this is it. This is the way for me to go for some time here. And it's kind of been nonstop ever since.
Yeah, I remember when I first met you at the golf store, you had the California Custom Golf, which was a little more of a high-end golf fitting, more of a high-end kind of club. And I always thought you'd be a good real estate agent. Your customer service and how you talk to people and all that kind of stuff, knew your stuff. I always thought that, not everybody can be this thing. Everybody thinks, oh, it's great. There's money to be made and all that kind of stuff. But it definitely takes a certain personality to still be sales and customer service oriented and that type of stuff.
Well, and I'll admit, I'm a pretty lazy person, especially when it comes to things that I don't enjoy doing. I can be very lazy with it.
Yeah.
And so real estate is one of those things where it was rare for me to find something that I was up and ready to get going. I was ready to get to work and ready to make it happen. And real estate kind of changed a little bit of my extra laziness in a lot of areas of my life. And it's just been something that I've enjoyed doing. I like working with clients, but more than that, it's become something where I like having a client that comes back to me and comes back again. And kind of getting that repeat business is how I've always tried to run my business, because I feel like if you want to work with me and you want to hire me to be your agent, my goal is to make sure that when you're ready to sell your house in 5 years, or when your brother-in-law is about to sell their house in a couple of years, that I did a good enough job for you to recommend me to them or to use me again in the future. So I know a lot of agents right now, they just kind of go through just trying to get through the sale. It's chaotic. Mine is very much the best service that I could do. The easier my life is going to be in 10 years from now, because the clients are going to be just coming back to me and doing their repeat business then. So that's kind of how I've always tried to run my real estate business.
Okay. So obviously your last name's a little different. It's Joens.
Yeah.
But what's the family history with that? Do you have any idea kind of what your background is with that? Or
I'm terrible with that. If you ask my mom, she probably knows every last little thing about it. But I know it's
Joens is very easy to say, but when you first look at it, you have to kind of, oh, that makes sense. It's Jones.
I just tell people it's just Joens. It's Jones. It's just spelled weird, and it's Joens. But I know it's Scandinavian, and I believe originally it was like Johns, like Jons.
Okay.
And somehow an E was thrown in there at some point through history, and now we're Jones. And so the hardest part is anytime anybody asks my name, I have to spell it to them. I have to say it's Joens. They're like, "What? What are you talking about?" It's like,
when you hear Jones, you don't necessarily think of that spelling.
And sometimes when you're signing up for something like on the phone, you just say, "Forget it." Just I'm signing up for a tea time, calling in to book a tea time. They're like, "What's your last name?" I'm like, "It's just Jones. Just write Jones." I don't even care.
Point. So what brought you to St. George? Obviously, Give me a little background on kind of what led you to Southern Utah to St. George.
Yeah. So my wife and I met in California. I was growing up. I grew up in Colorado, in Estes Park, Colorado. And then my wife and I were living in the Bay Area, working out there. And by then she was not my wife. We were just dating, not even engaged yet. But my parents and my grandparents had moved to St. George, and we had come out here a bunch of times as kids, kind of on little vacations, playing some golf, hanging out. And once my parents and grandparents were here, after a few years living in the Bay Area, we just said, it's so darn expensive. We loved it, right? There was a lot of things about the Bay Area that we really like. And every time we go back, we're like, man, we miss it here. But as soon as you start thinking about the price of living out there, I mean, I do decent here selling houses, but I'd have to sell 3 or 4 times the volume amount out there just in order to be, I mean, paying a mortgage in a lot of the area out there. So honestly, the price is the biggest thing that got us to switch over. And actually it was New Year's Eve of 2015 going into 2016, we packed up the U-Haul truck and we drove from the Bay Area to here, and that's it. We've been here ever since.
Now you just had you have a child as well, so we got to talk about your first kid. Like, how's that experience been? How's that changed things?
I don't know. If I give you an answer right now, it'll probably be a different answer in a week from now. But it's been amazing. I mean, fatherhood is something that, again, I was a lazy person, and being a father doesn't allow you to be a lazy person. It doesn't let you just say, okay, I'm going to leave him in bed and let him cry. I mean, it's a big responsibility, and it changes just your perspective on everything in life. And I will say, you don't realize, I mean, I know I love my wife to death and I'd do anything for her, but you don't realize what true love actually is until you have a child. And when you have that child, you're like, man, like, I'm responsible for this. You know, I mean, this kid depends on me to breathe, to live, to eat, everything. And so it's a completely different factor there for me is kind of seeing Stefan. He's 18 months old now, and seeing him get to the point where now he's a kid. He's running around the house.
18 months already. Wow.
18 months old. We actually got him his first putter the other day. Oh. I bought him a little putter on Amazon that extends. It's a little rubber, like, miniature golf head. But on our little putting green in the backyard, that's the thing. We spent all this money on a great pool and this great big backyard, and we have a tiny little 100 or I don't know how many square feet it is, but I think it's like 350 square foot putting green. And that's the thing he loves out of everything. I said, okay, I like it. Like, you're growing up to be like your dad, but he's all into the golf already.
Yeah. Okay. So the name, what's his name again?
So his name is Stefan. So
where'd you get that?
Next segment.
Okay.
So no, Stefan, it's funny. We actually had a lot of different names that we had been going around with for 9 months. And by, I would say, month 8.5 is when we actually kind of decided on it. And we decided on it pretty quickly once that name came up. We were, of course, watching the Warriors, and I'm a major, I don't think a major Warriors fan is really the right word for it.
Yeah.
I'm to the point of, if the Warriors game is on, don't talk to me. So we were watching a game, and we had all these different random names we were thinking of. We were like, I don't know, I don't like that name. And then I just said, what about Stefan? Because Stephen Curry is on there. And we started thinking about it. We're like, well, we don't want to spell Stephen because people will call him Steven. And so we said, what if we just spell Stephen? Because that, I mean, it's hard to mispronounce that. Yep. Some people might say Stefan, but there's no A in there. And so we said, you know what? That's it. That's the name. And so even though, yes, Stephen Curry kind of helped us get to the point of finding that name, very much so, it was more of just, we really liked the name Steph or Stefan for him. And now that he's 18 months old, I can't see him as anything other than a Steph. And so everything he does, he's like, nope, that's Stefan. And I can't even imagine a differerent name for him.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Are you planning on having any more kids at this point? Do you have you talked about a number that you want to hit, or is it just kind of... Obviously, it might be different. I might have to
a different answer in a couple days. So it depends on how he slept the night before. I mean, yeah, I do think we would like to have at least one more kid. Where it's one of those things where it's a lot easier said than done sometimes in terms of just going straight to it. So I mean, we'll see. I mean, my hope is that we're blessed with that, but I mean, if Stefan is the one we get, then we're more than happy with him as well.
Okay, so we obviously love basketball. Especially Warriors. Is it all basketball? Or is it really just something where it's all in on Warriors, or do you catch any other games, or is it really just...
So I'll do some sports betting on all the games. I usually am pretty good at kind of, I would say basketball out of all the sports is the sport that I know what's about to happen in terms of a sports bet, anything like that. I can tell which players are going to be really good. So basketball is what I can really dive deep into. But if I don't care what team it is, it all depends on how they're going to affect the Warriors' schedule. With that said, any team that LeBron is playing on is automatically my least favorite team. It used to be that way with Carmelo Anthony in some ways, but it turned into just, if LeBron is on the team, I just don't like that.
Do you have anything with Nuggets? Obviously, talk about Denver a little bit. I actually looked up your town because you mentioned it a few times, and I didn't know where it was at, so I kind of had to research it a little bit.
Yeah.
And it gets cold, and it's really high. I mean, it's a high elevation and very cold place. Yeah.
Well, and that's a lot of the reason why my parents ended up moving to St. George is because it was so high, it was cold, and the altitude, I mean, we would get headaches every night. It's not easy to live up there, but Estes Park, Colorado is, I mean, it's one of the most beautiful places in the country. It's right at the gateway of Rocky Mountain National Park. And so yeah, I got into all of the Denver sports, right? I'm still a huge Avalanche fan. I'm a big Rockies fan, even though they're miserable to watch. I'm a Broncos fan. I'm not a huge football fan. For some reason, out of all the sports, like football is the one I'll sit and watch, but I don't get super excited about it. Even when the Broncos won the Super Bowl 50, I wasn't standing up and yelling. I was like, "Hey, cool, we won." But basketball, hockey has been huge for me. I played a little bit of hockey here and there, but basketball, hockey, golf, and then some baseball. Those are the three that have really been big to me. Now with the Nuggets, I grew up a Nuggets fan, but I grew up a Nuggets fan before they ever really got good. I mean, I was a Nuggets fan when they were not even winning 20 games a year. They were horrible, way before the Carmelo Anthony days. And so the Carmelo came, AI came, I enjoyed it, but that whole Carmelo situation just got me off of it, and I almost despise the Nuggets now. And it's actually now probably my second or third least favorite team in the entire NBA, just because kind of growing up, I loved it, and it just kind of all turned on me when Carmelo happened.
So we just need LeBron to go to Denver, and then you just have... spite would just increase. It would just that'd be it. Just burn the bridge there.
I keep thinking every time they keep talking about, what if LeBron and Steph Curry joined up? I'm like, how can I even root for the Warriors then? I mean, what do I do? Do I just... I don't know what to do if that situation happens. I don't think it will happen, but if it does, that's going to be a complicated part of my life.
You and I like the sport betting once in a while. I mean, for me, it was something where my favorite team was my ticket. You know, there's a William Hill shirt that I should have bought that just had a picture of my favorite team. It was just a William Hill, over-under ticket, and that was what it was. But I love in-game basketball. It's probably one of my favorites because you can see the ebb and flow of the game, and you can see how close it gets back to the original number and how teams will come back. So I've always liked in-game basketball more than just from the start of the game. And then, like I said, with NFL, it's hard to get away from it because it's just everywhere and consuming during that time. The same thing. I kind of like watching the football, but once you get second half of the NBA season, playoffs, I am all in. I love NBA playoffs.
Well, and the one thing with football is I would like to see football go to all week, right? I mean, they've got games every day each week. I mean, for me right now, it's with basketball, I mean, you've got something to watch every single night of the week, no matter what. Even on all the holidays, I mean, you've got some type of game to watch. And usually the Warriors will play every other night, if not just every 2 to 3 nights at the most. And it's fun for me. And so with the live in-game betting right now, I can go and just say, hey, I want Dion Waiters to score 15 points or more, and then I want Klay Thompson to score 25 or more. And so then you can be rooting for players on each team just on if they score, you're like, yes, I need him to score more. And so I've found basketball betting to be kind of the most fun bets to make.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about golf. So obviously, is that one of the reasons you also moved to St. George from the Bay Area? You worked at a golf course, I believe, as well. So talk a little bit about your history with golf and what got you to St. George.
So I grew up a really good player. I grew up where golf was my life. I unfortunately lived in a place, unfortunately, I loved it there, but I lived in a place where you could only play golf April through the end of October at the most. And then the rest of the year, you can't. And so luckily I was blessed. I was able to have a house. We had a little, we had a kind of a oversized garage that we had a hitting net in there. So I would hit all summer, or I would hit all winter in there. And then my grandpa and I built a little kind of makeshift putting green back there for me to practice in the garage. And so I was able to practice a little bit more throughout the wintertime. And then in the summertime, I worked at the golf course eventually, but then I would get to the golf course the second the sun came up, and I wouldn't leave until the sun came down. And actually there's some pictures of me in the newspaper there in our hometown where I get my little Pontiac Bonneville and pull it up to the practice green and just turn on all the lights of the car and throw it onto the practice green just so I could putt at night. And there's one time where the news guy actually came down. He took a picture. He's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm practicing." So that was me growing up. I was all in on golf, pretty much all in on golf, all in on girls, and all in on just being the center of attention when I was a kid. But I was not in for school by any means. I never was. And now there's been times in my life where I was like, maybe I'd like to go back to school and study to be something, right? Because I feel like now I'm maybe mature enough to do it. But I wasn't. It took me a long time to mature to the point of realizing that life is not just golf. And so after I got out of high school, I moved to Colorado Springs for a year, University of Colorado there, and I joined their professional golf management program and with their business school. And after 1 year of that, I realized that, again, school just wasn't for me. So I was at an internship in Half Moon Bay, California, which I'll actually be there in a couple weeks here, but it's the Ritz-Carlton golf course, which honestly is where I learned a lot of how to be a good real estate agent as well. You kind of learn that Ritz-Carlton customer service side of things. And so I learned there. I was the assistant professional there for 2.5 years or so. And then I ended up buying, which was Butler Golf. And then I turned it into California Custom Golf, did a lot of golf club making, fittings, lessons. And it actually turned into the point once I moved it to St. George that a vast majority of my business was online, and I was selling to people in Dubai, in Asia, all over the place. I actually had some clients on Mauritius. I don't know if you ever heard of Mauritius, but it's a random island off the coast of Madagascar. And I had a couple clients on that island, and it's a tiny little island, and they're the nicest guys in the world, but they bought a ton of golf clubs from me. And so it was kind of cool. Like, I was able to have a business that I didn't really depend on the walk-in traffic, but I was able to continuously be talking to people from all around the world to buy golf clubs and then make golf clubs for them.
And then that led you to the real estate world.
Yeah, it led me to the real estate world. After I got out of the golf store, I wanted to just make golf fun again. I got my amateur status back, and then they ban you for a while. So I got banned for a year from playing amateur golf when I tried to get my amateur status back. And honestly, that kind of took me away from it. I mean, you probably remember there was a time there where you'd never saw me on the golf course.
Yeah, and I think early on I was into golf as well. Probably basketball more, kind of hurt my knee, and then started playing golf a lot later. That's another reason I moved to St. George. But I see all the people that work in golf don't golf.
No, they don't.
Because that's what they're spending all day at the course, or they're just standing behind the counter, or they're fitting clubs, doing lessons, all that. And when they get done, they don't think about, hey, I want to go play 18 holes now. They're like, I want to get away from it. So that's something I saw early on that I don't want to. I want it to still stay a hobby. I want it to be the recharge. I want it to be money games, tournaments. I still do all that type of stuff, but I never wanted to get full involved. And I've seen you get a lot happier with golf with your transition, because you can actually go out and enjoy it. It's not a job. It's not an income source.
It's not. I try to just make it fun, and I honestly like to play alone. I play alone the majority of the time, and a lot of that is because it's my break. It's kind of my peace out there. I can be out there. I listen to music and just chill and have a good time. I can hit 2 or 3 golf balls. So I don't play a lot with other people unless it's in, say, a big tournament or something like that. But I'm starting to kind of get to the point again where I feel like I'm becoming a good player finally again. The thing is, being in the golf industry for a while and working so much with clubs and TrackMan, seeing all that, I feel like I know more about golf and the golf swing and the and all the ins and outs of it than most people do. The problem is, in my own golf game, I just haven't really put it together. And now I'm finally getting back to the point where I feel like, hey, now I'm starting to act on what I actually know, which is a little bit more fun because I can play and actually feel like this is how I should be playing.
That's scary because you're already pretty darn good. So if you're getting better, watch out, Southern Utah. Carson Joens is coming at you. You've always been a really good player.
It's the Northern Utah guys you got to watch out for. Like some of these kids that you play in the tournaments and all of a sudden you get the BYU guys. You're like, okay, well, I guess I got to shoot a 64 today to have any chance. So
I played in Nevada, I played in California, played in Utah, and I would say, Utah has a really big group. It's got the longest state amateur in the world.
Yeah.
Like literally the longest continuous golf tournament in the world is in Utah. And the tournaments are usually pretty full. The payouts are really well. I go to other places and they're just smaller groups. They're more, money games or just little men's clubs and stuff like that. Utah's got a really strong group of golfers.
Yeah.
They really do. I mean, Tony Finau is obviously the one that's made it the farthest recently, but Zach Blair is no joke. I mean, he was really good. There was just Clay Ogden. There's some guys that were really pretty good. But
they really are. You don't think of Utah when you think of golfers, but there's a lot of, I mean, the Summerhays, I mean, Preston is going to be the real deal golfer. I mean, I can tell you, I'd be surprised if he doesn't win a major at some point here, but there's some golfers around here that are extremely, extremely good.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, what else do you want to know about me? Any, maybe kind of throw it on to you a little bit. Last week we did, we talked about your favorite books. I'm more of an Audible type guy, if anything, but, I'm trying to think what else I would do with books. I mean, books, a lot of it is when I'm gifted a book, I don't read a whole lot of books. I think I said a few weeks ago, probably the most recent book that I've sat down and read was maybe like The Cat in the Hat or Green Egg, something by Dr. Seuss at the most, probably a book to my kid, but I don't sit down and read. If anything, I'm in my car and listening to an Audible book type thing.
So when you have an audiobook, is there a certain genre? Is there something that if I was going to hand you an audiobook, what would you want it to be on? Would it be sports? What kind of genre do you think you'd actually be like, I'm going to listen to this whole thing, or it's actually going to crack open a book? Is there any kind of thing that just you can see yourself being excited about listening to?
So sports for sure, but I especially like nonfiction, something I like true stories. And then I like books about faith, especially if it's kind of both mixed in. So I like reading books about some athlete reading books. I like listening to books about an athlete who is kind of talking about his spiritual journey throughout life and kind of giving their Christian testimony within their book. And so I like reading that type of book just because I think it applies a little bit more to me.
Okay. Do you do podcasts at all? Is it something where you enjoy? I mean, we're obviously doing this podcast, but is there any kind of particular genres of podcasts that you would listen to?
I have maybe 2 different podcasts that I listen to, and most of that is more business related. Most of that is more related to just kind of growing wealth and learning how to maybe be a little bit more smart within the business world and maybe investing world. So I do a little bit of that, but not nearly as much. Even with the podcast, I'll probably just watch them on YouTube. Yeah.
Let's talk. How'd you meet your wife? I know you said, did you meet her in California or was it in Colorado? I remember you.
Yeah. So I moved to California in May of 2012. Okay. And in June of 2012, I was going to Subway a lot. Subway is just the little sandwich shop there, and one of the only there weren't a lot of places to eat there, and so it was the cheapest place that I could go to eat after work. And so I'd go to Subway a whole bunch, and she was there. She barely spoke any English whatsoever, and I kept getting the idea. It's like she gives me a different look, and like she looks at me and she gives me a different smile, and we seem to be awkward around each other, And then all of a sudden, it kept going on, and by the end of June, I said, I'm going to give this girl my number. I'm just going to see what happens. And so I'd never do this. I'd never give a female my number. I'm terrified to even talk to them. And I went out to my car, and I had already gotten my sandwich. So I got my sandwich.
Do you remember what sandwich was it?
Oh yeah, I know. My wife could tell you what type of sandwich it was. It's a foot long on white with just the chicken strips, black olives, mayo, ranch, and buffalo sauce. Like, it is pathetic. It's a horrible there's no vegetables whatsoever. But my wife, she could read that off every time. So I got my I had a little green sticky note in there, and I wrote, "Hey Karina, you should call me." And then I wrote my phone number, and then I walked in, and when I walk in, she's helping other customers. And I I'm like, "Hey, excuse me, Karina." And I hand this to her, so nervous, and I just book it out the door. Well, at that point, I'm never going back to Subway ever. I can't. So
that's true.
Sure enough, she didn't call me for a little while, and things were going on in her life. And eventually I got a text message, and the text message was a little "hey" with the sandwich emoji. And so I knew, I was like, oh, this is the girl from Subway. And we started talking, but actually we didn't really start dating for well over another 2 years is when we actually started dating. But we became really good friends before that. And then the second we started dating, honestly, within a couple of days of actually being boyfriend and girlfriend, we knew immediately, like, this person is meant for me, even though the language barrier was still significant. She is from Mexico and she spoke very little English. Now you would have no idea that she never spoke very good English. I mean, she waits tables at one of the fanciest restaurants in town. But she, right away I knew, like, this person is for me. And we actually moved in together within 2 months of starting to date. My landlord actually was getting ready to sell the house. And so I had to get out of the house that I was in, and she was living with her aunt and uncle. So I just said, hey, I mean, how bad would it be if we moved in together? And of course we didn't tell my parents for a little while until after we were all settled in. And that was a whole nother scenario. But now we look back at it, we're so happy that we did, because we started our life together, and we got a dog within a month of moving in together, and that dog is still with us. And when we look at it, that dog actually was born pretty close to the exact same date that her and I actually started dating. And so we see that dog, we're like, man, she's been with us this entire time. It's crazy to see that we've had her all along.
What kind of dog is it?
She's a boxer pit bull. And she's, I mean, when you look at her, you think, oh, this dog might be aggressive, but she's the biggest love ever. And we got her a golden retriever as well. So her and her golden retriever sister are best friends.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I mean, other than that, I mean, about me, it's pretty much for me, it's just family, faith, and work right now. I'm very big into my faith, and sometimes I wish I was much bigger into my faith, of course. Like we've said in the past, we live in a place that being just a non-denominational Christian, or maybe a Christian who's not associated with the LDS church, it can be a little bit different living around here. With that said, I've kind of realized that everybody is still looking for the same goal, right? Everybody's still looking to get as close to Christ as they can in their own way, in their own culture, and whatever religion they've got. And I've really found that my way to Christ has just been through a very personal relationship, one-on-one with him. And it's interesting because I've seen a lot of, especially in St. George, you get a lot of opinions, right? You get a lot of opinions like, oh, you're not doing this right, you're not doing this right. And I've learned for myself that I can't think of myself as perfect anymore. And I say that on here because it's become such a big part of my life that I've learned that it's impossible to be anywhere close to perfect. And for me, I've realized that I'm super, super guilty of so many different things in my life, but I'm forgiven. And that's the big portion of my life that I would say I'd like to just tell everybody else about.
I love how C.S. Lewis basically puts it. Until you know that you're flawed, that you've sinned against whatever, that you need a savior. You know, you can't get saved until you need a savior. And then when you make that first conclusion that you are flawed, that there is a morality out there, there is a God that has things he prefers and things he doesn't, but gave us a path to be saved through that. I think that's when the whole book opens. And that's where the idea of what the whole good news is all about, what the whole gospel is all about, is it comes down to that.
Well, and I'm not a book reader. I mean, I would be lying if I told you that I've read the Bible from cover to cover. It's one of those things where that's just not where I am, but it's amazing because even though God is invisible, you can very much have a personal one-on-one relationship that you feel closer to him than anybody else on earth, even though you can't see him. And maybe you haven't even read every word that he wants you to be reading. But at the same time, I've really been able to get kind of a different perspective on life. Yes, since I was a kid, but more and more as I grow older, because now I realize what it all means. And it's one of those things where I just encourage. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I go to a listing appointment here in St. George and they say, oh, well, are you LDS? And I'll be straight up open with them and say no. And you know what? If I lose a client over that, which I have actually many times, that's okay. And I realize that if that's the reason that you don't want to work with me, then I don't want to work with you either.
Yeah. And it is something where when you hear Utah, whenever you go out of the area, people will think of a couple things, either snow, skiing, Winter Olympics might pop in their head because that's such a predominant part. Maybe the Utah Jazz, that's obviously the professional team. The soccer team's pretty popular. The next thing obviously is that dominant faith that is in Utah. And I found in my time in Southern Utah, moving here in 2005, that it has changed a little bit more. There's definitely been more of an influx of other cultures kind of coming into St. George.
Definitely.
So it has changed a little bit. There isn't necessarily a feeling where if you're not of a dominant faith, that you're not going to get business. There's still, and it has to be a little bit more of a melting pot here in Southern Utah than it was, because so many people are discovering Southern Utah. You got the World Senior Games, you've got the marathon that's very big that just happened. Then you've got the Ironman, the big Ironman. Yeah. They're doing the national championship here. So you are getting a lot more people into the area. But I found that's one of the things that gravitated to me, your love of golf, basketball, and of course our faith. We can kind of share that together and feel like we're not necessarily on an island when it comes to that. But there's definitely been some times where people would prefer to work with that, with the faith, and that's understandable.
And that's okay. Totally, yeah, that's so be it. I mean, I feel like a lot of faiths around the world would do the exact same thing. And that's totally fine. I mean, for me, I have a lot of friends in St. George who are LDS, and I have a lot of friends who are not. And I don't really look at either of them differently, and I don't think they look at me differently either. So it's one of those things where you really just have to learn to be yourself and to focus on what you truly feel in your heart. And I feel like this is just kind of what's come to me ever really since I was a very young kid with my parents. And now as I get older and older, it's so much easier to drift away from it, but it's also so much more powerful when you actually realize the truth. Yeah,
it's funny. Listen to your story about that. I was the same way with school. It wasn't something I was really into. I could literally just read the page, almost memorize it, pass it to. My wife hated it. She always had to study. Yeah. I could just boom, read it, done, memorize, pass the test, move on.
Yeah.
And it was something where a lot of times the questions I could figure out just by reading the question, which answer it most likely is. But it was something where I never was a book person at all. And as I become closer to Christ, my book reading has dramatically increased. And going through the book, I mean, it's funny, you start with Genesis. If you can make it past Leviticus, you might make it. But boy, that book is like just boom, hitting a wall.
Yeah.
But it really is just, I encourage you obviously to just try to read it as much as you can. Start with Luke. I think that's one of the better ones to start. John, that's just really good to just start down the road. Then you can start getting into tough stuff like Numbers and Kings. And
one of the things about Exodus, I mean, the second book of the Bible, watch some videos on that, because you can see in person today. Well, a lot of times you're not allowed to get into Saudi Arabia, but there's places on earth that literally are word for word exactly what Exodus says. And so you can watch them all on YouTube, and you can see actually, I mean, as you're reading this book that was written thousands of years ago, you can actually see the exact spots on planet Earth right now where that happened, and it's obvious when you see them when they're there. I mean, just alone where Moses he hit the rock and the rock started flooding out. You can see that rock right now out there, and if you get on YouTube, it's pretty crazy. And one of those things is there's not a lot of times where you can see something that was written that long ago and it still exists and the proof is pretty clear. Especially when you go and look for the proof, it's not that hard to find. And so that's kind of what I found interesting. And I hope to be able to travel a lot more later on in my life to see a lot of these things that I've always wanted to, like that.
Yeah, that's something my wife's a little leery about going to some of those places because of the way women can get treated, or the clothing they have to wear and stuff like that. So she's a little leery about that, but I've kind of showed her some videos. Hey, it's not that in all the places that you're going, because it is a lot of different faiths also celebrate some of these holier areas.
Well, I mean, you could go to Israel and I mean, I could wear this in Israel, no problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we went to Rome and absolutely loved Rome. It was one of those things. It was a religious experience, more for me than her. She wasn't quite at that stage, but going to Rome, going to Vatican, I mean, it was just, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I mean, you had basically gelato pizza church, the whole way. And it was just amazing. And how old some of the things and how large some of those things were.
Yeah.
But that changed I wasn't a big travel person either until we did that trip. So, but it was great to get to know you. Anything else? Well, let's say this. What's going to be on your tombstone? If you wanted to wrap it all up and somebody walked up to Carson, I think it's Joens.
They're going to misspell my name.
They're going to mispronounce it until you look at it. It's just Jones. Okay.
Yeah.
What's going to be on your tombstone? What would you say? Okay, this is what I would want to sum up if somebody came up to me.
That's tough, because honestly, your answer the other day was so good. I loved your answer, and so your answer was you love your family.
Yep. It was like it was wife. I mean, sweetheart.
Yep.
Lucky there, kind of thing. Love to play golf. Love what I do for a living, and love my God. I mean, those are the ones that if it's on a tombstone, that's what I want.
Above that, what I'll just say, I think that's perfect. I mean, golf, my family, and God are all extremely important to me. I would almost change that for just sports in general, but I would love to be able to play golf the same week, or if not the same day that I died. I think that would be kind of cool. Even if I didn't know it was going to happen.
With your son on the bag kind of thing? Is that what you're hoping?
Sure, but I think it'd be awesome to do what I love to do, especially, with my son, with my wife, whoever, but do that on the same day, if not that, at least the same week that I was going to die. I think that'd be a cool way to go out.
Cool. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show. Put any comments, like and subscribe. We'd love to have you be a part of the show. If you have any topics, we got a bunch more topics that are lined up for the show. We try to drop these every Tuesday for you. But hopefully you got to know Carson a little bit better, got to know me a little bit better. And please comment, like, and share. And we'll see you next time on the Clear to Close podcast.